me. I play Esperanza on Netflix's Raising Dion, and you're listening to the Fascination Street podcast.
I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with Lisa Zambetti. She is a casting director in Los Angeles and has cast some pretty big TV shows and been involved with casting in some pretty big films as well. In this episode, we talk about where she grew up and what her folks did. It was a fun little conversation about that. And then what made her move from San Francisco to New York and then to LA and all the things that she did in between. We also talk about her 2 podcasts that she has. One is a true crime podcast, and one is a podcast based on casting and her friends talking about all the things that they notice and they see on the TV shows and the movies they watch. So go check those out. They're available everywhere. And this is my conversation with casting director Lisa Zambetti.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
Welcome to Fascination Street Podcast, Lisa Zambetti. Am I saying it right? Is it Zambetti or are you a Zamboni girl?
Well, Zamboni, yes, I've been called that for many, many years, but no, Zambetti, sure. That's right.
Zambetti, all right. Well, Lisa, what I like to do, it helps us understand how you got from where you were to where you are. And we kind of just walk through your whole life. So where were you born and raised? Where'd you grow up?
Oh my gosh. I'm a Bay Area girl, San Francisco Bay Area.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Green Bay.
No. This is the Bay Area, SF Bay Area.
Is that where you are now?
No, I'm in LA right now, but I spent a long, long time in New York. So, I really do feel like I'm a New Yorker as well. But now I'm in lovely Los Angeles because that's where the work is. That's where I do my thing.
So growing up in San Francisco, the Bay Area, if you will, what did your parents do for a living?
Well, my dad was a professor at Cal State East Bay, and he was a professor of all martial arts. So judo, taekwondo. He actually started the yoga program there back in the 70s. So he was a professor. And then my mom was the best secretary anybody could ever want. And she worked for many big tech companies in Silicon Valley. Nothing too crazy in our family, just a normal family.
Yeah, normal family. I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, I don't know anybody whose dad wasn't a professor of martial arts. First of all, you said silicon, and just so you know, everybody else says silicon, and that's
really?
okay. Yeah, that's okay. We're not going to hold it against you this time, but I have so many questions.
Okay.
First of all, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a professor of martial arts.
Yes.
That's a thing?
Indeed. Well, they call it kinesiology. That's a fancy word for PE. But yeah, he was a professor, and that was his specialty, was all the martial arts. And he helped coach for the Olympics at one point, and that's how he made his living. And his parents were, Italian immigrants, and they were like, why does my son want to teach martial arts? It's very outside of their culture, but he did it. So, and he's always been just a great, example of somebody who had discipline and who just didn't let anybody say no to him. So that has helped me in my career.
Well, first of all, I want to apologize. I had no idea that you were of Italian descent. So let me start all over.
Okay.
Welcome to the show, Lisa Zambetti.
There you go. Exactly.
Okay. Next question about your dad. Did all your friends know that that's what he did, that he was a martial arts guy?
Yes. And so, of course, every boy that came around, they were like, oh my God, is your dad going to kick my ass? Kind of a joke that just never went away.
Did they think that was a joke? I wouldn't have thought that would have been a serious question on my part.
Well, since I did grow up in Silicon Valley area, most of the other dads were working for Lockheed and early Apple and all those tech companies. And so my dad was kind of the cool dad who was in super great shape, and he had long hippie hair and a big Fu Manchu mustache, so that was kind of cool. And he listened to Led Zeppelin and all that stuff.
Listen to Led Zeppelin and kick the shit out of people with no shoes on.
Exactly.
So what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a street girl.
Sorry, what?
So yes, when I was little, I told my mom that I wanted to be a street girl because I'd seen the crossing guard at school. She seemed very important, and she had her sign and her neon yellow jacket, and she would cross the kids. And I thought, oh, that looks like a really great job.
Yeah, she commanded respect from lots of people. I mean, cars would stop if she said so.
Absolutely. And anyway, my mom was like, you want to do what? So that was my big aspiration. But then later, when I was in high school, I thought that I wanted to be a journalist. But what I realized was I had seen Sigourney Weaver and Mel Gibson in this movie called The Year of Living Dangerously. And what I realized is that I wanted to play a journalist. I didn't necessarily want it to be a journalist, or I would see a movie about lawyers, or I would see a movie about something. I thought, oh, I want to do that. But really, I just wanted to play those things. So that led me to a life as an actor for a really long time.
We're going to go back just a little bit to your street girl.
Street girl. Yes.
Street girl. Well, I don't know if you are aware of this, but as of now, you are a street girl. You are a street walker. Because that's what my people are called. That's what my listeners and my guests are called. So you're now a streetwalker. Congratulations.
Wonderful.
You finally lived your dream.
Absolutely. I can't believe it. Finally.
Took a while, but you got here. Okay, so you went from San Francisco to New York.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
That's a great question because a lot of people who study acting go to LA first. But for some reason, I had in my mind that New York at that time was the actor's dream. That's where you go to be in plays and to hopefully someday be on Broadway and be in theater companies. And so that's what I did, like so many people. And I was just very, very lucky. I actually got to be on Broadway once, and I got to do off Broadway and off Broadway as an actor. And then I also wrote plays and directed plays. So that was a fabulous chapter of my life.
So normally when I ask that question, everybody who's getting into the business of show has to make a decision. Am I going to New York or LA? Am I going to take a left? Am I going to take a right? And I wish I could say it was 100% of the time, but it's really only about 70% of the time. The people who go to New York, it's because they were drawn to the theater and the plays and that kind of thing, as opposed to, in front of a camera.
Exactly.
Why did you want to be on the theatrical side of acting?
Well, I think that my training and just really my artistic upbringing was all about the theater. I mean, that's what you studied when you went to acting school. You studied plays. You didn't really study screenplays or television scripts. And at that time, it was still like, Meryl Streep and Al Pacino, they had come up through the theater. That's kind of the path that so many of my friends before me and my cohorts, that's what we did. And we all know that eventually you can go to Los Angeles. But I think New York sometimes is you have to have a lot of energy to survive in New York. You have to work a million different jobs and live in crazy apartments with a million different people. And I think there's a certain age when that's okay. At least the people who I was hanging out with, we all wanted to go to New York first and just see if we could make it work, make it happen.
So you said that was a sort of a thing that you and a bunch of your friends wanted to do. So did you go up there with a bunch of people?
It was sort of like a trail of people who came. A couple of my friends went first, and then I went, and then a whole bunch of other people came. So it was sort of like a trail of people following each other. And I think that's normal. I mean, I know that can happen. People who go to Chicago because a friend there is making, a living in a theater. I mean, theater has a legacy of people who follow each other because, we want to find common ground. We want to have a network of friends. We want to have a support system.
Nobody wants to move to the middle of nowhere by themselves. It's already going to be hard enough. You don't have a job. You don't know the town. You don't know where you're going to live sometimes.
Right.
And to do all that with nobody, that sucks too. So you're in New York for a long time. Are you in Manhattan at this time, or are you in one of the shittier boroughs? Oh, good.
Yeah. Upper West Side. At that time, I mean, I could barely afford it, but I stayed on the Upper West Side. I think if I were going to go to New York now, I would be somewhere far out in cool Brooklyn. But at the time, Upper West Side, that was our stomping grounds.
So you said that you got into plays and you did some on Broadway and then off Broadway and then off Broadway and then off. Just kidding. How long was it? Like, how hard was it to get your foot in the door of the theater scene there?
It was hard. It was really hard. It took a couple of years before I was even getting auditions for professional things. And in the meantime, you're just starting to make your own work. You get together with some friends and you read somebody's new play and then you rent a theater, so you just have to keep trying to work until somebody will give you work. So it definitely took a few years. And even after I'd had a few professional gigs, it's always a struggle. You just have to really love it and you have to have the sense of the long game in your head. And the minute you stop loving it is when you need to pivot and do something else. And I don't think any of those years go to waste because all the things that you learned, all the people you met, it's just a great education and it just trains you for so many other things that you're going to do.
So you spent a few years putting together, I'm assuming, some sort of a black box type of situation?
Yeah. And sometimes it would be, a black box play, but it would get a review in the New York Times. And so suddenly it's like, boom. But then, a year or two would go by and you wouldn't really have anything going on that you could really write home about. But, that's the life of any artist. The high highs and the quiet lows. I'm not going to say low lows, but the kind of more contemplative years when nothing is happening that you can really be pointing at externally, but a lot of internal things are happening that come to fruition later.
How come you didn't quit during some of those quiet lows? Why didn't you just quit and go home?
That's a really good question. I think every one of us wakes up every day going, am I going to quit? You're always faced with that. That's just such a good question. And everybody answers that at a different time in their lives. As long as you were passionate about something you were working on, there's some monologue that I'm working on that I really want to crack, or my friend has this play that there's a perfect role for me, or I just saw a show and I'm so inspired now, or I just took a class with a master teacher. New York, you can't see all the things that there are to see. You can't do all the things there are to do. So there's always something that is just inspiring you, even if it's just going to a new gallery opening, even if it's a new book. I remember when the Harry Potter books were being released in New York, it's like when something happens, it happens to the whole city. So you'd be on the subway and you'd see somebody reading the latest Harry Potter book and you'd kind of like catch that person's eye and be like, what part are you on? Oh, I'm on this part. Or what chapter? And there's something about that, about sharing the city together through the ups and downs. I mean, I was there on 9/11. That is something just very special. So that kind of just keeps you in the game as well, as to be part of. Once you're in that community, you don't really want to leave.
It's been a long while since I have gotten to say these words. If you don't mind, if it's not too painful, tell us your 9/11 story.
Oh, well, like a lot of people, I was at work that day. I taught for the Actors Studio master's program. I was in an office and suddenly somebody said, oh, go turn on the TV. And, we saw what was going on. And then everybody just started running out of the building, just running as fast as they could down the street. And you just saw masses of people emptying out from buildings. And I walked home 60 blocks to get home and just sat in front of my television, it seemed like, for the next week. And then we weren't cleared to go back to teaching because our school was like right kind of in the shadow of everything. But then finally, the dean of the school said, hey, we have to get back into class. We have to get these kids who it was their first week of school, their master's program. We need to do something. We need to get together. We need to just be with each other. And so I taught a class that I don't think I'll ever forget. Just kids completely shell-shocked. Some of them had been helping with the rescue efforts. Some of them had just been holed up in their apartment. And we just had a class where we could just all connect and create some art together. But there was definitely a changing point for me where I was really like, if you're not doing exactly what you want to be doing in that moment, you definitely change course. If you're not in the relationship that you want to be in after a crisis like that, you definitely go, okay, this is over. We need to, recalibrate because life is really short.
I think that the pandemic is doing that for a lot of people.
100%.
It's making them change their jobs, change their careers, get divorced, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of people in LA are here because of the entertainment industry, and our industry has changed so much in the last 2 years. People don't have to be in LA to do it. A lot of my colleagues have gone back home to, the middle of rural Massachusetts or Connecticut or, New Mexico to be in a place where they really have always wanted to be and still do their job.
Yeah, that makes 1,000% sense.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
So I ran into previous guest of the show, Chris Gronkowski, the other day, and it went a little something like this.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Chris. Hey, you know what sucks? When I get done with my workout at the gym, my protein shake's not cold anymore, man. It's room temperature.
Weird. I haven't run into you at the gym lately.
Busted. Okay, truth be told, I don't work out, but I do get thirsty after a long day of podcasting. I just can't seem to keep my cocktails cold.
You should use an ice shaker.
What's an ice shaker?
The ice shaker is a double-walled, vacuum-insulated stainless steel shaker bottle with a patented twist and agitator that breaks up the protein powders.
So you're saying I should switch to an ice shaker, take out the agitator so I can fit more ice in the cup and it'll stay cold longer?
Steve, you don't need more ice. The ice shaker is third-party tested and verified to keep your drink cold for 30-plus hours.
Chris, you're a genius. I'll still remove the patented screw and agitator and just add more booze.
I guess technically you could, but if you actually use the ice shaker as a protein drink cup, the agitator breaks up the powder and doesn't bounce around like you're shaking a paint can.
Why are we still talking? Let's party.
Gronk style!
That's right, Streetwalkers. Ice Shaker is the new sponsor at Fascination Street Podcast. Ice Shaker is made from kitchen-grade stainless steel so it doesn't smell all funky after you use it a couple of times like those cheap plastic ones. When I'm out and about doing interviews or partying Gronk style, I use the Fascination Street Podcast Edition 26-ounce Flex Ice Shaker cup, and it keeps my drink cold until the sun comes up. You saw Ice Shaker on Shark Tank. All 5 sharks made an offer with Mark Cuban and Alex Rodriguez closing the deal. Now you can get a deal too. Order your own 26-ounce Flex Cup right now at iceshaker.com and use the promo code FSP for $5 off your first order. Once again, that's iceshaker.com, promo code FSP, as in Fascination Street Pod, for $5 off your first order. That's iceshaker.com, promo code FSP.
Let's get back into it.
As far as what I've been able to divine from talking to people and interviewing people, a lot of people have left some of those places where they were doing a bunch of acting. Like there was people who lived in Atlanta because of all the acting that was going on there, or in the New Orleans area for the same reason. And then like you're saying in California. And I think a lot of people have moved away from that because as far as I can tell, and we're going to talk about how wrong I am in a few minutes when we talk about what you do now. But from what I have understood, a lot of the casting now is done like through Zooms and sending in videos and whatnot. And so there's no reason to live in expensive ass Los Angeles or live in Atlanta if you don't really know anybody. Just go back to where you're comfortable. As long as you got good internet, you can fly to wherever if you get the job.
Yes, to some extent that is true. However, if you're going to be hired in LA or, in any region, you have to be considered a local hire. You definitely have to be able to house yourself, transport yourself to and from the set. It's not quite as easy as it may seem, but certainly a lot of people, if you still have your apartment in LA or in New York, you can definitely have that as your address to where your check needs to be sent, or to prove that you are a resident somewhere. Then a lot of actors went back home for the last few years, and that's been a blessing to a lot of people who have to spend so much time away from their loved ones in order to do this. But right now most auditions are done over a Zoom or a Zoom-like interface that my industry uses. I have had a couple of in-person auditions for chemistry reads where you're trying to determine, two people who are going to be cast together to see how they read together. But even chemistry reads can be done over Zoom. So in a way, yes, it definitely has changed. And hopefully it has made it a lot more convenient. For example, if you're in LA and you live on one side of town, you don't have to drop what you're you're doing, get a babysitter, get a dog walker, and drive over for a 5-minute audition and drive all the way back. So hopefully it's made that a little bit more actor friendly.
Makes sense. Back to New York real quick. What did you do on Broadway?
I did a Tennessee Williams play called Summer and Smoke. And it was just a wonderful experience. You know, when you're in a Broadway show, it's just this special clique of people that you're around for the time that your show is running. And so you get like a special discount at Sardi's. You get invited to things that you probably wouldn't have heard of before. So it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Would you do it again?
Would I do it again? Sure.
Should we pause while you go do it again?
No. Actually, I'd rather cast it again. I'd rather, be casting for theater, and casting for plays in New York would be wonderful to do again.
Okay, so let's talk about casting. You are a casting director and you have been for
a few years, just a few.
Why? What made you decide, you know what, this acting is cool and directing these plays is fun. Now I'm just going to sit behind a desk and pick who gets to be in these things. What made you decide that? Why casting?
Well, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, the 9/11 pivot, where I just realized I needed something more. I needed something to be much more collaborative. And the age I was, I decided I was going to intern for a casting director. And I realized very quickly that casting brought together so many things that I love. I mean, I love actors. I know how to talk to actors. I love writers. I love directors. Casting really brings together all of those things. And you fall in love with writing and you want to see it brought to life. And you want to put people in front of the director, in front of the producers that you hear in your head and see in your imagination. So for me, it was just a natural evolution. And just to correct what you said, casting directors really don't pick who gets cast. We put, a pool of people in front of our producers and they do the hiring, but we definitely try to find a great pool for them to pick from.
I was just kidding. That was a private joke between me and Amy Kaufman.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just kidding. So I was always under the impression that the casting director kind of whittles down the pool, so to speak, of choices for presumably the director or the producer sometimes to choose from. Is that basically right?
Yeah, that's right. We could get as many as 2,000 or 3,000 submissions for one role. And so that takes a lot of time to look through and to really think about the different versions of this character that you want to show the director and the writer.
I've only ever auditioned for one thing.
Yeah.
Actually, I wouldn't even really say I auditioned. I showed up for a casting call. How's that?
Ooh, so we crashed a casting call, eh?
Well, so a long time ago, there was this film called E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
I heard of it. Sounds familiar.
And the little boy that was in it, his character was Elliot, but his name is Henry Thomas. And he lived here in San Antonio. His very next movie, I think, well, it was his next movie after everybody knew who he was. I don't know if it was his very next movie, but it was his next movie after he was a big star, was called Cloak and Dagger. So it starred Dabney Coleman as the bad guy and Henry Thomas as a good guy. And it was basically a spy movie where all these secret plans or whatever were embedded onto this Atari video game cartridge called Cloak and Dagger. So I'm a super tiny little kid that was being filmed in San Antonio. And there was a casting call because they needed a bunch of kids to be Henry Thomas's friends, right? Just his sidekicks or whatever. And so me and my sister, a year and a half age difference. And so we're right in the age group that they needed. So my dad took us to this casting call. It was done in a big hotel, like a Hilton or whatever. And there must have been 300 kids there, right? I'm assuming that it's because there was 300 rambunctious kids there, which has to be super stressful. At the time, I didn't know they were casting directors or even casting assistants or whatever. I just thought they were like sheep herders. They were so mean.
No.
They were yelling at kids. It was bizarre. And like they were yelling at kids and they were not happy. And me and my sister looked at each other and we were like, nah, we're good. If this part is gonna be this rough, nah.
Well, those
we're
probably weren't the casting directors. Those were probably the second ADs or the first ADs.
Well, I think they were the first a-holes. How's that?
There, I teed that up for you. I teed that right up for you.
I appreciate it.
Because they usually handle the extras casting.
It was an uncomfortable experience for me. And so
Oh.
that's why I said we didn't really audition. We went to a casting call, but then we didn't audition. We never got in the room because we were just like, nah, we're out.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, my sister did go on to be a world famous actress. So that's cool.
Did she?
Well, in our world, maybe. She's been on some things and she's done some stuff and she still does things when she can and whatnot. So it didn't turn her off the way it turned me off. So that was cool. But you wanted to be a casting director because, like you were talking about this life change and this reassessment of what you wanted out of life. Did you say that you apprenticed for somebody?
Yeah, so I interned for a casting director named Billy Hopkins, who's very famous in New York. And he's really famous for casting actresses who end up getting nominated for Oscars. He's really good at that.
Like who?
Like Gwyneth Paltrow for Shakespeare in Love. And I believe that he cast Glenn Close.
I don't know these people you speak of.
Yeah, I know. They're very obscure. Anyway, so he's just got impeccable eye for talent and taste. So yeah, that was my first internship.
Now, typically interning means you're working for free because you're learning so much and that's your payment, right? Were you working for free back then for that?
No, I got 10 shiny dollars for lunch every day.
Wow, that's better than being on a jury. What do you think about unpaid internships?
Well, we can't really have them anymore, to be honest with you. In the past 10 years, nobody can really have unpaid internships for reasons I won't go into. But, a lot of schools will pay if you get college credit or the college has some kind of fund that will pay you for the internship. But it's not like it used to be when I was starting out. I mean, it was literally like taking out the garbage and, doing all kinds of things. And I'm like, I have a master's degree. But anyway, the sad thing is I would never have been able to break into casting without an internship because I had 2 little babies and I wasn't just out of college, at least when I started in Los Angeles, trying to be in casting. So without that internship giving me that first try, it would have been very, very hard to break in. But unfortunately, interns, they were really abused and taken advantage of. And so that opportunity got taken away. And the studios, don't really let you do that anymore.
That makes sense. What was your first big break? What was your first big casting where they said, okay, I'll tell you what, Lisa Zambetti, go ahead, knock yourself out.
I don't think that's happened yet. I was an assistant for a fantastic comedy casting director. I told her that I really, really wanted to become the next step up, which is an associate. And just after a month of working for her, she just looked at me and she said, all right, go take those actors in, go put them on tape, come down, tell me what you thought. And I was like, whoa. I mean, it was just amazing.
So no prep, no, hey, next week you're going to,
Nope.
It was just like, all right, go do it right now then.
Yeah, she's just like, go do it. And I was by myself with all of these, amazing actors and, reading with them, shooting their scenes, redirecting them, and then coming down and telling her who I thought were good. Of course, she would review the tapes and everything, and she would just, pick who she thought should go forward. But that was such a gift. It just takes somebody giving you the chance, and then you're off and running. I'll always be really grateful for that.
Absolutely. And probably, it sounds like, gave you some confidence.
Oh, yeah. There are a lot of really badass women who are casting directors who I was lucky enough to work underneath. And every single one of them just gave me such confidence because they just were very blunt people, good at what they did, but no bullshit, just very direct, non-Hollywood type of people. They called it out. If something wasn't right, they would call it out. Or they would champion an actor. They would go to bat and say, no, you really, really should think about casting this actor. They're going to be amazing. They're going to be breaking out.
So I won't say it's hearsay because I heard it from the actor's lips, but there was an actor who his casting agent sent him in for this role and he read it all serious or whatever. And then, he thanked him and he left. By the time he got down to his car, the casting director was chasing after him and he said, hey, come back. I want you to do it again, but this time loosen up. Don't take yourself so seriously, whatever it was. And so he went back and did it. And then he got the role of Spicoli.
Oh, yeah.
Does that happen a lot? Let's just say I come in to read for this particular part, and my interpretation of this role is that maybe it's a little quirky or a little less serious. And then I guess part of your job is to say, you know what, appreciate that, but this is a more serious role than that. So do you want to try that again? Do you do that too? Is that the director part of casting director?
Yeah, it kind of is. You know, if somebody's coming in and if they're talented, but they're just kind of on the wrong track, they just need to be recalibrated, you definitely would redirect them. And sometimes it's the director, him or herself, who will do that. I mean, that's happened a number of times where a director will be like, oh, you're so good, but you're not right for this role. Here's another role for you to go out and come back and read. You know, sometimes that happens too. And it's all so subjective, Steve, you know. I could think that somebody is totally wrong for something, but the director sees just a little something and redirects them and they shine. So each situation is just so different. But that's a great story. Are you friends with Sean Penn or?
No, I just heard him tell that story.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
She's somebody I'm friends with.
Right.
Wouldn't that be weird if I was friends with Sean Penn? Be weird.
It would be extraordinary. I'd be interviewing you, trust me.
It seems like it would be a very intense friendship. That guy seems like a lot.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Now available wherever you buy audiobooks. Richard Stanley's Up on Game. From robbing banks to ruling his prison gang. Paco got spun out on meth one week and hit the yard with a box cutter in hand. He'd apparently been holding a grudge against some new guy. He was from the same car as Paco, but he seemed to prefer to stick to himself. The quiet new guy was in his late 50s and sported dark brown hair and a handlebar mustache. For whatever reason, Paco decided to allegedly target this obscure and solitary member of his car. They say the man lay there on his bunk, reading a book, when Paco came into the building. He made his way toward the man's bunk in meth-fueled haste. With his box cutter gripped in his right hand and meth making most of his decisions, at that point, Paco lunged into the man's bunk and began slicing away. And slicing and slicing. Defensive wounds were dug into his forearms, and foot-long gashes were added to the quiet man's ribcage before Paco jumped off. Paco had sliced himself on his own left forearm during all the mayhem of his surprise visit with Mr. Obscure. Paco proceeded to haul ass out of there and headed back to his building. Delve into the true life story of Richard Stanley. Up on Game, from robbing banks to stacking Bitcoin. And the sequel, Up on Game, When I Ruled the World. Now available wherever you get audiobooks.
Let's get back into it.
Is there an Academy Award category for casting director?
I am so glad you asked that. There is not, but we have been lobbying the Academy for a very long time to have one. And in fact, the president of the Academy right now is a casting director. So you think that eventually we would get one, and I think that we will. But we do have our own awards called the Artios.
No, that's not a real thing.
It's a real thing.
No,
it's a real thing. I've been nominated for one. I can tell you it's a real thing. But awards for casting, it's just kind of very interesting to me sometimes, because if you have a super big budget and you can afford super big A-list stars, I mean, that's great. And you're going to have a great cast. But I'm almost more impressed by the more independent films where you don't have the studio, you don't have the budget. It's not sold yet. There's no distributor yet a casting director puts together an amazing cast. And it's, you know, based on the script that everybody falls in love with, or the director just has such vision. So for me, those are the things that I love to see get awards.
Yeah, like whoever cast is past tense, right?
Cast, right.
So whoever cast The Usual Suspects, they should get an award.
Absolutely.
That movie was amazing, and they had $0 budgets.
Absolutely.
So I agree with you. All right, well done. We are in agreement. Now, I am under the impression that you have cast one single episode of Criminal Minds. Oh,
what?
No, wait.
No.
138 episodes of Criminal Minds. How does that work? So you just get attached to the show? Is it an agency that you're connected with? How do you cast 138 episodes of a show?
Well, I was very lucky. I got hired
138 times?
Well, no, you get hired for the show, and then hopefully the longer the show goes on, the longer you get to cast for it.
So is that how that works? Like they're like, okay, we're going to start this new show. Hey, we need a casting director. And then you're just there for the duration of the show?
You know, unless something terrible happens and you're not. But I came on to Criminal Minds much later in its run. So I came in like season 9 and it was on for, 15 seasons. So I already had a legacy of amazing casting directors before me, before, I joined the team.
So at this point, you're casting for guest stars and you're casting a guest background and
not background. No, we would like every episode there are a guest cast. So that's what we would be casting. And sometimes we had to replace a series regular or cast like a love interest or something that was going to recur more than just one episode.
Okay. Was there any crossover? I mean, like, forgive me, but I'm not all that familiar with Criminal Minds, but I know that like some shows like the Million SVUs, they'll have crossover episodes where you got to watch both episodes to figure out what the hell's going on. Was Criminal Minds that kind of a show? Did they cross over with something else?
Not so much. Well, we did have a spin-off for a while. So yeah, sometimes there would be crossovers on the two Criminal Minds series, but we're not like all the Law and Orders and all of the Chicago Med and PD, which I love those shows, by the way. And it's really fun for the fans when you can do crossover episodes.
Is that show still on, Criminal Minds?
It is not. It wrapped not that long ago, but it's still the #1 show on Netflix, if you can believe that. People just cannot get enough of psychopaths and victims and villains.
Well, any chance it's coming back since it's so popular? I have no idea.
I think that there's been a lot of rumors about it coming back. So, you never know. People would certainly love for it to come back. So, we'll just have to see if that happened.
Well, that's cool. So did you just get lucky and walk into that job? Because like we're already on for 9 years.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It was a dream, It's a heavy responsibility to come into a show like that and to continue it, to keep the level that they expect. It was a fantastic opportunity, but I think that myself and the casting team, it's $1 billion asset. So, we kept it rolling along.
Now, this is going to sound like a really stupid question, but presumably there was already somebody there before you got there, and then that person left for whatever reason. So at that point, is there a casting call for casting directors?
Well, luckily they didn't need to, because I was more than happy to take the next step up.
So did they reach out to you? Did somebody call you and say, hey, we got a spot, we need your help? Or did you go knocking on the door?
Well, I had already been on the show as an associate. So I was the associate casting director. And then I was lucky enough to be promoted to the head casting director.
So the casting director line works kind of the same way that a writer's line does, and that there's different steps and you move up?
Yeah, the ladder for casting is very short, but the rungs are very far apart.
Really?
Yeah, it can take a really long time just to make the change from being an assistant to being an associate. Because if you're an assistant and you're good, people want you to stay an assistant for as long as possible, because there's just a lot to learn and a lot to know. And then you move to associate, and then you can move up to casting director, sometimes a co-casting director kind of a thing. But, that's basically it.
Is there a guild?
We do have a casting society. It's kind of like our guild. And then we also are Teamsters. So we have a union, but we're part of the Teamsters Union, Local 399. That's my union. And we're very, very lucky that they took us under their umbrella when we wanted to unionize.
So is that what the CSA is, the Casting Society of America?
The CSA is the guild, but our union is actually the Teamsters.
Got you. Are you afraid of the Teamsters?
No, but people are afraid of me when I'm sitting somewhere and it comes up like, what union are you in? And I say Local 399. They kind of look at me like, oh, wow.
Yeah, they do. They're like, oh, she's got an Italian last name and she's in the Teamsters.
That's right.
Hey,
That's right.
Tell me about the Planet of the Apes films.
So that was one of my first jobs. I think that was my first film that I worked on.
Which one was it?
This was the Planet of the Apes with James Franco, Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Those were the movies where there was a pandemic that wiped out a bunch of people and there was a patient zero, right?
I'm trying to remember now. I can't remember what the premise was, but that film kicked off a new franchise of the movies. Frida Pinto was in it, John Lithgow. It was really David Oyelowo. I mean, it was an incredible cast. That was a great experience. And just looking up the apes, how the CGI of the apes was just astonishing. Just to look in the production in the art room and just see what they were planning was like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this before.
So that was like 2000.
I think my boys were 3 years old. So I think that was 2011. I don't know. I have to go look. I can't remember.
Let's go with 2011, like you said. Hey, you're right. Check you out. You got to work with Andy Serkis and everything. Person I was talking about is Tyler Levine.
Oh, Tyler Levine. Yes. So that was really cool because it was kind of his first pivot from comedy into something a little bit more serious from what I remember. Kind of a serious role for him.
It was a very serious role. And he's the guy who caused the whole pandemic.
He is?
Yeah. He got on a plane. He was sick because he got sick at the lab.
Right.
He got sick at the lab because he was monkeying with the thing.
That's right. You remember it better than I do.
It's because I'm such a huge fan of him. That's why. Yeah, so he's patient zero. He's the one who caused it all.
Oh,
Way
wow.
to go, Tyler Levine. What was it like to cast Andy Serkis?
I mean, I didn't cast him, but it was amazing to watch that whole process. And there were a lot of other actors besides Andy who came in and auditioned for the role of the apes and really worked with Terry Notari, who is an amazing physical performer who played some of the other apes. And he trained everybody on how to literally, behave like an ape and walk around on these really interesting stilt kind of things. I mean, that was really, really cool to watch.
That must have been super, super fascinating being, behind the scenes of all that. There was a pretty huge on Hulu television show recently called Reservation Dogs.
Yes.
I hear you have a hand in that.
I had a little hand in that. Yes. So I was a co-casting on the pilot, which was incredible to be part of that team. And I got to fly to Oklahoma. The show takes place in Oklahoma, in small town with some indigenous high school kids and their community. And so I got to fly to Oklahoma and try to find some amazing young actors who could fill those roles. And even if they couldn't fill those series regular roles, to have them fill some of the other roles that came down the pike, as the episodes went on. And so that was just incredible to be able to work on that. It was just a real honor to be able to meet those kids and those families.
So you don't just work in Los Angeles.
Well, I mean, I do, but that was a situation where I was doing some of the Los Angeles casting and doing sessions here, but they really needed somebody to go with the team to go on site. And so that was something I don't normally get to do. And it was just incredible. I mean, we drove all around the state, in their biggest cities like Oklahoma City and Tulsa, into really teeny, tiny little towns to try to reach people where they live.
Why Oklahoma, not New Mexico?
Well, the showrunner, Sterling Harjo, is from Oklahoma, and it was really important to him to be able to shoot there if he could, instead of using New Mexico, or a lot of people shoot in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, instead of using that, or even using a back lot here in LA. He was able to do it there on the ground, and I think it made a huge difference.
Well, that show got a lot of accolades from everything that I listened to and saw and heard and people. So hopefully it comes back and you'll be a part of it when it comes back. I'm crossing my fingers for you. Well, why podcasting? Streetwalkers, Lisa has a podcast called Killer Casting. Why?
I don't know why, Steve. The real reason why I have a Killer Casting podcast is I just like to talk about shows that I get passionate about. I have a couple of friends who like to do that too. And so when we watch something incredible, we just want to get together and go, did you see that? Or that casting was amazing. Or that actor did something I've never seen them do before. Or look at the wallpaper in that shot. Or, I'm really into wallpaper. Like, I love looking behind you and like what your whole setup is. And I like to talk about things in the industry. We've been having some really great conversations about survivors in Hollywood of sexual abuse and just all kinds of really really interesting things that I want to talk about. So it's kind of a hybrid audience. I have a true crime podcast as well. And so some of my true crimies follow me over to Killer Casting when I'm talking about a dark and twisty, murdery kind of a show. But also a lot of actors listen because I talk about acting and I talk about the industry and process and stuff like that.
What is the name of your true crime podcast?
So the true crime podcast is called Real Crime Profile, and I co-host it with two real law enforcement FBI profilers and one New Scotland Yard criminal behavioral analyst. And so they've really worked on real cases, and we talk about true crime. We just cover all kinds of cases, cold cases, cases that are currently in the media, all kinds of things. So, and we've been doing that for a really long time.
We'll check you out.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm assuming both of those are available everywhere.
They are. They are available everywhere. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to your pods, you can find them.
I recently heard that IMDb now has a podcast platform.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
And you're in the business. Cool. That makes me feel better. Because somebody was like, hey, why don't you put your show on IMDb? And I was like, what are you talking about?
Oh, I didn't realize it was a platform. I thought maybe they have a podcast. So I think I've seen that before, that they have a podcast, that they feature certain people in the industry, but I didn't realize they had a platform.
I was told today that you can listen to podcasts. Like they have a platform. Your show should be available on that, is what I was told.
Breaking news. I had no idea. I will look into that immediately.
I just found out yesterday that my show is available on Audible. I was like, what? That's books. No, that's also podcasts, I guess. So that's cool.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
So weird. So Killer Casting, is it called Killer Casting Podcast or just Killer Casting?
Just Killer Casting. Yep.
And the other one is called
Real Crime Profile with Jim Clemente, former FBI profiler, and Laura Richards, who's former New Scotland Yard.
Former New Scotland Yard?
Yes, it's called New Scotland Yard.
Why?
I don't know. That's your next guest, is somebody from old Scotland Yard.
No. That's your next episode. Your next episode is why is it new and what happened to the old one? Lisa, as we're heading out, can you tell everybody where they can find you on social media?
Oh my goodness. I'm on Instagram at Lisa Zambetti Casting, and I'm on the Twitter at Lisa Zambetti, and I'm still on Facebook. Facebook is a great place to have conversations about casting and about killers. So I'm still on the Facebook.
What about TikTok? Are you TikToking with all the kids?
No, are you?
Of course I am.
You are?
Yeah. No, you should see me dance. No, I don't do that. No, but I do post little videos trying to get people to the podcast.
Oh, well, that's a good idea. I should probably try doing that.
It's just little clips and things like that. Now, Lisa, before I let you go, is there anything we didn't talk about or I didn't ask you about that you wanted to talk about today? Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I have a new puppy. That's the only thing.
And your puppy is beautiful.
Thank you.
What is the name of your puppy?
Eleanor.
Why?
Don't know. She just looked like one as she rolled all around like a little puff ball. I just thought, you're an Eleanor.
Nice. Well, Lisa, I certainly enjoyed hanging out with you.
Oh, me too.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy casting day to hang out and let us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. Thank you so much for asking me.
It was 100% my pleasure, and I apologize for all of the rigmarole that it took to make this happen. So sorry about that.
Not at all.
But thank you for being patient and hanging in there with me.
Sure.
And if you ever need to fly to San Antonio to cast a dumpy, balding, chubby, four-eyes guy who has zero talent or skills, I know a guy. Give me a call.
I will. You'll be my first call.
I know a guy who fits all of those criteria. Yeah. Lisa, thank you so much, and you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2001 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is from the song Say My Name off the 2021 album Underdog Anthems, used with permission from Jack's Hollow. If you like the show, tell a friend. Subscribe and rate and review the show on iTunes and wherever else you download podcasts. don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are available there as well. Check me out on Vero at Fascination Street Pod and TikTok at Fascination Street Pod. And again, thanks for listening.